Okay, let's chat with James and Luke. Everybody, welcome back to the next episode of Let's Chat. You will see that I have facial hair since our last episode because it's been so long.
Actually,
it's been a while.
It's because this is 3 days of growth for James because he's such a man. This is 3 days of growth. This is 4 days of growth for me, just by comparison.
Yeah, very good. But we're very excited to be back. I suppose we better get started with the sponsors first, hadn't we?
Sure, we've got a very, very exciting guest today, but we've also got some very exciting sponsors. And I know I keep banging the drum about the internet not being the best place to go for all of your property news, but I do fundamentally believe that as soon as we say, I'll just look at this email from my favourite property information provider, and suddenly we're looking at cats playing pianos. And so if you want to stay focused, then go to a great source of news that's going to bring you all of the best from the property world right to your doorstep. Still the best way, I believe, to consume content and information. And that is our sponsor, Blue Bricks Magazine. So they are the best, in our opinion, and we really appreciate their help in bringing this show to you. So give them a shot, give them a couple of issues, you'll be hooked.
Absolutely. And then as well, we've got to do 978 Finance next, I suppose.
Yeah,
so
why not? Why not? It's Christmas.
It is. It's a Christmas special. Those guys, they will fund all of your buy-to-let mortgages, your development finance, bridging loans, anything you need as an investor or developer. 978 will be able to fund those deals for you.
It wouldn't be a Christmas special without a cracker joke. So knock, knock.
Who's there?
Property.
Property who?
Property Filter. The best way to get the best deals on the market. Don't go scouting all your deals on Rightmove. Get the professionals in. Use AI-driven technology to be able to find the best deals in your area, make it stack, make the deal, and move your property journey forward just like that. Property Filter.
They've just released, I believe, a new function on there to find portfolios for sale as well. Which
shut the front door.
I know. Very impressive. Very
unbelievable.
Impressive. And our last sponsor is the Optimized Entrepreneur. So I've been working with those guys for a while now. I cannot tell you how beneficial it's been for me. Optimizing myself as a business owner, brain fog is gone, lethargy is gone, energy is through the roof, weight is down considerably. I think I'm 1.5 stone off.
It's just this big hoodie, isn't it, that you can't see it, but you are looking Superman fit under there.
I am Superman fit. Well, nearly Superman fit, but we'll get there next year. But the Optimized Entrepreneur, those guys will help you optimize yourself, and therefore you'll be able to perform better in your business.
Talking of an optimized entrepreneur, who have we got with us today, James?
We have, honestly, one of my favourite people in property.
Look at that smile.
I love it.
Come early for James.
He's such an amazing chap. I am envious of his creation in business, in life, in all of the right ways. So we have Mr. Paul Lanfear.
Hello, chaps. Thank you very much for inviting me on. I'm genuinely thrilled to be here. I'm particularly thrilled by that beaming smile you have.
Mate, I do. I love it. Honestly, not everybody gets the beaming smile like that.
When he grows up, he wants to be you. That's what he told me in the car.
Fair enough.
I don't think it'll ever happen. I never will grow up.
Now, it might be, it's hard for you to believe, Paul, but there might be people out there who don't know who you are. So if there are any of our listeners don't know who you are, what do they need to know about you to understand what makes you so flipping amazing?
I think everything has been plan B, okay? Plan A...
I'm going to make a note of that.
Yeah.
Plan A was to be the guitarist in Metallica. Genuinely to be the guitarist in Metallica.
Oh my God, me too.
Well, there you go. See, we're not alone. So I was in loads of metal bands and all kinds of different bands. And when the Metallica Black Album came out, I listened to it on repeat for about years and years and years. And I was just obsessed. I used to play guitar 12 hours a day or something ridiculous. And the plan was to be a rock star. And that was genuinely the plan. I hated school. So I'm dyslexic and I'm not putting my school performance down to that. That's just context. I was also very easily distracted by all kinds of things. Girls, for example, I found them very distracting.
Yeah, they are.
So I completely failed miserably at school. And I tried to pass the English language exam, couldn't pass it. My English teacher took me to one side. And he was a really lovely guy who had my interests at heart. And he said to me, you're never going to do this. So we can flog you to death and try and get you to do this, but realistically, you're never going to manage this. So maybe we can kind of dress it up by, maybe you do English literature and we can kind of try and hide it on your CV or something like that. But really, we're at kind of the end of the line with you. It's like, fair enough, not to worry. I spoke to my parents. They're both teachers, both very like working class. My dad's from the northeast. My mum's from Sheffield. My dad was, these are his words, not mine. He was brought up in a slum with, rats and mice running through his bedroom. My mum's family worked in the steel mills. Death, like loss of limbs, loss of digits, was a routine phenomenon in that world. The factories had their own hospitals for a reason, bless my mum. And she said to me, look, I love the idea of you being a rock star. Obviously, it's a good idea. I'm not sure she really meant it. Why don't you just go and do your A-levels and then go and be a rock star? And I was persuaded by this. I thought, this is a good idea. In hindsight, I see the strategy, okay? And so I went off and just one of the A-levels I wanted to do was economics, but for some reason I couldn't do it. So they put me in law, and then I totally got the law bug. So a few of my friends were not bad lads, but they were doing stupid things that young men do when they're young, like standing on people's garages and just messing about, but getting themselves in trouble. And I noticed that that was back in the day, where a police car would turn up next to you, put the window down, and the tone of the conversation would make a big difference as to how the next few minutes would go. And what I noticed was this: if I spoke to the officers first, eventually that window would go up and they would drive off and everybody would get on with their lives. If my friends started speaking to the officers first, the window would stay down, the officers would get out of the vehicle, and at that point, everybody was in trouble, and needlessly so. So, long story short, I fell in love with the law, became a lawyer, got to uni, was told to give up on my first day at uni by my mate Eddie, who said, look, Paul, you are broke. Your family is broke. You haven't got any qualifications. Like, what are you doing here, mate? And he was saying this not to be unkind. He was doing that thing of like, this guy doesn't realize he's going to fail, so I'm going to do the right thing and make sure he doesn't fail. I'm going to get him to give up before he fails. Are we allowed to swear on the podcast?
You can, if you want to, sir.
And I thought, fuck you. I'm not like. And the rest is, I got like a first in law, got the highest degree that year was awarded, won all the prizes, like every single prize that could be available. I won, practiced law in all over the world, like New York, Asia, London, Leeds, and had a very successful career until my daughter was born, and I had that first real reset that I think people have when your kids arrive. You look at your life and you go, 80 hours a week, is this the direction of travel? So I then trained lawyers. I've trained lawyers all over the world. I like to say that if I ever get in trouble in a former Commonwealth country, I'll be fine, because there's people as judge. They're all judges now. They're all judges, and some of them are very high in government. That hopefully one of them will get me out of prison. And then bumped into my now wife, in the queue of a nightclub. Tapped her on the shoulder. I said, "Is it worth us coming in?" She looked at me and said, "No." And the rest is history. So like within a year we were married and starting having a family and all that kind of good stuff. She's the property person. So she loves property in a way that, if I'm honest, I don't. Property is a vehicle. Like, it's a good vehicle for building a life. I'm obsessed by this concept of building a life, a beautiful, elegant life that you can be proud of, that meets all of your needs. And property is just one of many vehicles that allows you to do that, not without its challenges. So she's always been more focused on the property side of things. I've been more focused on running the business, which is the property, so raising the money, handling the finance, managing, external relationships with people. And she's like in the back office, she does the property. She's highly introverted, detail focused. So it's a bit of in a very similar way to you guys, because you're more on the introverted side, you're more on the extroverted side. Liz and I have that balance. And over the years, we've done all kinds of things. We've had a very big business. At our peak, we had 236 tenants. I would not recommend having 236 tenants. And we've done every year is very different for us. So one of the guys who works with us, he says, what's interesting with working for you is every year is so different. In January, everything is kind of reinvented. You set a new course, and that is what we do because the world is always changing. I love surfing. I go to the beach every week. And the thing I notice about going to the beach is when you've been away from the beach for 7 days, it's changed. Everything has changed. The sands have moved. And I actually think the world is like that and property is like that. But we sometimes kind of get into just being on the treadmill, doing the same thing. And I do not subscribe to that. So every year, do an exercise. We reinvent ourselves if we have to. And then I do other stuff. Obviously, I love my surfing, love my adventures, podcast, breakfast meeting. I have a little business group, and I organise adventure retreats. I take people surfing, take people up mountains, a lot of good stuff.
Yeah,
Very
interesting.
That's me. That's the answer.
Let's bring it back to growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So, what you struggled? I struggled at school terribly. I'd pretty much stopped going by about 14 years old.
Yeah. So
I understand. Again, myself very easily distracted. Wasn't dyslexic, but ADHD, and so school was just socially brilliant for me. But in terms of academically, it was not a good experience for me. And I sort of shied away from education because of my experiences in that setting, and I sort of followed a very different path. I went straight onto a building site. But obviously, you grew up in Devon? Is that correct?
Yeah, in Torquay. Yeah, so, Torquay Hospital.
Torquay boy.
Yeah.
It's and obviously I grew up in Devon as well, so I understand the challenges, we'll say, about growing up in that area. There's not a lot going on. Great place to live in terms of the setting itself, but in terms of opportunity, in terms of growing up as a young person, there's not a lot to do.
Yeah.
So you sort of go down one path or the other. You stay and get involved in the small town antics, I think we'll call it, or you move off.
Yeah.
Don't you?
Yeah. And you see that even in this, when we're recording this now, you look at all of our seaside towns. The truth is, for most of them, their best years are behind them, which is a real tragedy. And what we need is to reinvent them and to reinvest in them, because even like the most affluent seaside towns, the truth is that's just 2 streets. That's all it is. There's a street with restaurants. There's then a street slightly further back with some boutique shops, and then you're into serious levels of poverty, deprivation, drug and alcohol problems. And there are various charities. So I work with a charity in Scarborough called the Wave Project, and that part of the Wave Project uses surfing to work with disadvantaged children from those areas, because it's such a good confidence builder. And also they work with first responders and that kind of thing. So I don't think things have changed. Seasonal work is really challenging. Split shifts are even worse. So if you work in a kitchen, you work at lunchtime, that's hard. Changing beds at hotels. Give that a go, mate. That is hard graft. It's physically demanding work to do. But that's the majority of what was available at the time.
So if we look at, it's interesting you bring up Seaside Town, because obviously both of you have got that experience. If we bring it back to property for a minute, what does the opportunity look like for today's British seaside town from a property perspective?
I think, so obviously, I think the easiest place to go to is obviously the kind of holiday let market. But that's not free from its difficulties. So they were going to bring in some legislation that has not currently come in, which was going to cause quite a lot of challenges for that sector. But the reality is that a lot of that sector is reasonably seasonal. So you have to find a way of smoothing out the seasonality, because you can't have an empty property for like half the year. Probably, I think there's some really interesting stuff. Like, have you seen how car parks work? So seaside car parks at resorts, I mean, they are so clever and they make so much money. So if I was looking for an opportunity right now, I'd say car parks at the coast, because they're pretty much technology run. They read your number plate. It's all done by an app. I think that's definitely an area for growth.
How do you manage the seasonality factor with that investment, though?
I think you're going to just have to ride out the cash flow wave, aren't you? And so when you're making an absolute fortune in the summer, like, don't go and blow it all. Like, you're not going to be 10 grand, 20 grand a month all year round, are you? But I think people who operate those businesses know that. I mean, it's not unusual for people who have surf schools, let's say in Cornwall. You'll see they physically close their building and they are nowhere to be found, and they're not answering their phone. And that's because they're in the Caribbean. They're off to so they make their money in the summer. They work 7 days a week. They've got all hands to the deck. They're employing their kids, everybody they know they employ for a few months of the year, and they move out. So I think it's about riding that seasonality. I mean, interestingly, in property, we used to see quite a bit of seasonality. When we had 236 individual people in HMO rooms, we used to see seasonality. So we used to fill nearly all of our rooms either in January or August. And the rest of the year, there'd be some churn, some turnover. But I mean, I think we filled something like 70 rooms in August, where the graduates would move on and they'd come to us. And you'd have the usual Christmas reflection period where people would be like leaving their boyfriends, leaving their girlfriends, or just telling their flatmate they love them and they want to move into their housemate they love them and they want to just be the two of them in a flat. So even in property, there's seasons. I mean, in life, there's seasons. The great Jim Rohn talks about seasons. Like, know what season of life you're in, and you act accordingly.
And what season of life are you in then?
Just as I said that, I was just reflecting on that. I'm in a springtime. So I'm in a springtime of my life, which is a period of kind of exploration and reinvention. There's much that I'm hanging on to and I'm keeping, like the absolutely fundamentals of it. But, our daughter has gone to university, so that's freed up home life in a way for Liz and I. We were talking before the podcast, like my father is at the last stage of his life. So it's, I'm allowing myself to dedicate a period of time for that as well, which is visit him regularly, be relaxed when I get there. And kind of, I was saying to you, like, I'm struggling with acceptance around that. But I want to make it the best possible, enjoyable experience for both him and me, because it's the natural part of life. So I'm kind of in this springtime of my day-to-day responsibilities of fatherhood have, long since diminished. Like, she's 18, she's, a grown woman, she'll do her own thing. And now she's moved away. So I'm back into this springtime, where I can establish a different tempo, different responsibilities. It's lovely. It's nice, exciting.
So it sounds like you're in a great position. You've talked about all of the things that you get to do. You used to get to do parenting. Now you've gone from kind of parenthood to sonhood, where you're now looking after your father. And with the success that you've created, you feels like you are a master of your own time.
Yes.
So how do you, and you obviously balance fulfillment and success.
Yeah.
And you talk about spring. Spring's usually a time for planting. So how do you maintain the ambition and the drive after already having achieved so much and feeling like you have a good balance in life?
I think there's like two sides to that coin, isn't there? And there's two energies at play. Okay. So there's like the negative energy of that, and there's the positive energy of it. So I'll deal with the negative first. Okay. So me and my friend Phil, we became net millionaires on the same day. And we were walking, doing my favorite walk. And he said, it's interesting, isn't it? It's not what I thought it would be like. And I said, yeah, it's not what I thought it'd be like. And his thing was he thought he'd have a helicopter. So he thought when you became a millionaire, you have a helicopter.
What, like a telegram from the Queen when you were
that kind of thing. And it's like, shit, I didn't get a helicopter. What happened there? And then, because then you realize how expensive helicopters are. And how you don't need one and all the rest of it. And I said to him, how do you feel? And he said, do you know what? It does feel good. Like it feels great. And he said, do you know the thing that really troubles me, Phil, is I'm still scared. I'm still in fear. I'm still in that place of, I can lose this all. I can always go back to zero. I can always have to, And so it was interesting at that stage that there was that contrast between the two of us. And I have done a good deal of work around that. But I think if I'm honest, there is still that thing of, because I came from zero and I had no plan B, and I didn't have any help, in a sense, although I've had fabulous mentors on the way, it's like there is always that fear of that's a possibility.
Scarcity.
I have very recently lost everything.
Yes.
And obviously that was the catalyst for, or amongst other reasons as well, the catalyst for property and poppadoms, or one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a really odd experience. Very freeing as well, because I went into all of this and I was like, well, you haven't got anything, so you've got to do it, bootstrap it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really quite liberating.
100%.
Because you can't lose the nothing that you've got, so it doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
It is a bizarre feeling losing because obviously I'm mid-40s, starting again completely. It was a very, we spoke a lot during that period, didn't we? And it was a tough time, and I'm very grateful for people like Luke who showed me the support that they did. But even if you did lose everything, you've got so much talent, you would make it back and some. I'm certainly certain of that.
I've no doubt of that. But I also don't aspire to be in the club. So I used to hang around with a guy who used to say this strap line of, if I lose everything, build it back. And I thought, that's bullshit, mate. Like, yes, it's true, but like, let's not wish that upon ourselves.
Absolutely not.
Let's not take such disproportionate risks and be foolhardy as to, because, particularly when we have responsibilities and what have you. I would describe what you had as a hard reset in life.
It was very difficult.
But do you know that thing where you power off your phone and you force your phone to go black and then turn it on?
Yeah. And
most of us never do that. Like we might turn it on silent occasionally, but we never do a hard reset. Interestingly, Phil, who I was just talking about then, he literally one of my best friends, probably my best friend in property. He died at 43. Like, so fairly short, within a year of that conversation, he died. Happily married, beautiful house, beautiful kids, wealthy, healthy as, great lifestyle. And that was it. He got cancer, made it the first time, didn't make it the second time, got a cold. That was it. The last call I had with him was, I've got this cold, Paul, I just can't seem to shift it. And I was, because I'm an idiot, I was like, oh, you'll be all right, mate. You'll be fine. So that was my hard reset. Because because you go through that checklist, he had everything anyone could ever want, and still doesn't make a difference.
It's very difficult, those, because again, I experienced sort of a fair bit of that in my life, and it does change your outlook in terms of what actually does matter.
100%. See, I think that these things are blessing, because I tell you what I think the worst thing is. I didn't think we would get into this today, but I think the worst thing is a life of silent misery.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
And unfortunately, I would say a big proportion of the population are living quiet lives of what I describe as quiet desperation. And I think that's the worst thing. I actually think when you have something that jolts you so hard that it snaps you, and you wake up and you go, never again, or something just is so catalyzing that it forces you to, and you see it in people, don't you? Like the woman who walks out of a difficult relationship, and years later you see her and looks absolutely amazing, like absolutely blossoming, and it's like, amen to that. Like, or the guy who's he's always slightly struggled with his weight, and too many beers, too many cigarettes, and all the rest of it, and he's ripped.
Yeah.
So what happened to you, mate? Oh, well, and you listen to the story, and it's like, thank goodness that happened to you, because it was just enough to snap you out of it. The final thing I'll say on that is there's this lovely book called Return to Love by a woman called Mary Ann Williamson, I think it is. And she says in that book, and it really struck me when I read this book, she said, what happens is people don't allow themselves to reach a rock bottom. They soothe themselves. This isn't in the book, but this is what she was now talking about in a more context. Like, they soothe themselves with food, TV, dopamine hits, when really people should allow themselves to hit the rock bottom. And she says, when you're there, stay on your knees, and kind of, in her, she talks about prayer, but doesn't need to be a religious context, but it's open your mind to what could be possible.
I absolutely agree with that, because I had to really feel it and live it, and because there was nothing I could do about it. It was, it was circumstances completely out of my control.
And you've got kids, got 2 girls, haven't you?
Yeah. I've got my son as well. He's
your son as well. And so I think it's there's almost like a little bit of cheat code as a parent as well, isn't it? Because you have that to turn to.
Yeah.
I in the darkest moments of my life, I've always dialed into, like, how do I want to be in this moment for my daughter to see, like, how I deal with this as a challenge? Like, what version of a guy do I want to be?
But that, as an individual, you need a lot of self-awareness in order, and not everybody possesses that.
Yes.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because what you talk about there is a transformation window when you get leverage on yourself. Because I think on the way down, you're absolutely right. We self-soothe and we get into escapism, alcohol, drugs, pornography, whatever it is that is robbing us of our vital energy that will create our lifestyle.
Yeah.
Because we're all a master of our lives, not just a
distraction.
Yeah, but we a lot of people classify themselves as a victim of their circumstances, and they blame others instead of allowing it to just, right, I'll lose everything. And it's funny, because only when you get there do you realize what's actually great about life. When you're on the way up, you think, I'll be happy when.
Yes.
Instead of realizing I'm happy because.
Yeah.
And that's,
or I'm happy now.
Exactly, I'm happy because.
There are so many levels to that. I want to take us to that, like the positive other side of that coin in a second. But before I do, I think one of the greatest revelations I've had in life, and this in fairness did come from a book, which I now can't remember the name of, which is, like, happiness is a superpower. I believe optimism is a superpower. I talk about it on my podcast all the time.
Yep.
But do you know what? Like, imagine if actually the trick that we don't know, we're not taught at school, is if you're a happy person, you organize your life in such a way to try and invoke as much happiness as possible. Like, it's everything downstream of that is good. Great relationships, great health, money, wealth, all the things that are necessary components of life, freedom. It's all downstream of happiness. And I'm becoming increasingly convinced that a cheat code or a hack is to work on the happiness element and see what follows from that, rather than I'll be happy when I have the Bentley, or I'll be happy when I have the Rolex.
But you'll always be chasing.
I have a feeling you will. I've got a feeling you will. In terms of, like, the opposite, we talked about that, the negative energy, the running away from the fear. I think there is the other aspect of it, which is the running towards the outcome. So the thing that has really driven me, and I am absolutely fanatical about, is having, like, a vision. like having a really strong, clear vision that aligns with your values, that is then translated into missions. So I don't think of goals so much, I think of missions. And I think what has really worked for me is to get really serious about what the vision is for my life. And this started in 2005 when it was before Millie was born. Liz and I were dating. I don't think we were married. And she plonked a packet of Post-it notes on the table. And she said, Paul, we're going to plan our lives. Interesting. And at the time, I was a really stressed out lawyer. And I was so into the corporate game. So all I was thinking about is like, how do I get the next promotion? How can I get that pay rise? You know, where are we going to go on holiday? Like just that I was just in that groove, basically. And she said, just write everything you want on a Post-it note. I was like, really? And so I'm more receptive now, but I tell you what, I was not a good student back in those days. You know, I was like, what are we doing this for? You know, I was not willing.
It sounds like when I started working with you, I was like, why would I do that?
What are we doing all this nonsense for?
It's ridiculous.
She said,
a bit woo-woo.
Yeah, woo, exactly. So she said, write down everything you want. Don't sense check it. Don't challenge it. Just go for it. So we ended up with all these Post-it notes all over the table. She said, right, what we're going to do is we're going to mark these 10-year periods of time. So we put a Post-it note for every 10 years. And she said, well, just roughly, where on this timeline would you like to do the things on this table? So we started putting them on, and we disagreed about some of them, and we ended up more or less like that. She's like, right, let's take a photograph of this before we do anything else. And we took a photograph. Long story short, everything we put on that wall came to be. Everything. And some of it was batshit outlandish, like absolutely outlandish, like some big figures, some big numbers in there in terms of property and passive income, recurring income, outlandish things we put on it, but yet it has come to pass. And I have distilled that down into, every year going through an exercise whereby nothing is off the table. It's to totally allow a period of either reinvention or refinement. So if everything is pretty cool and you don't want to rock the boat because you're loving life, which in fairness I do feel like, then maybe it's just little tweaks, and you don't need to reinvent yourself. But if you're a stressed out, overweight lawyer who drinks too much, then you probably do need to bang the button, and you need to say, well, I'm going to do something completely different.
So you were in litigation,
yeah?
Wasn't that?
Yeah.
Is that correct? Did you do criminal at one point as well?
So I was broke, as I have mentioned. So I had to get sponsorship to be able to complete my legal education. Not least of which was from a really amazing charity called the Leonard Sainer Legal Foundation, who gave me an interest-free loan for me to do part of my legal education. The reason I mentioned that is I had not, when I was completing my education, I had not yet got a job. And obviously your first job is really important. So I wrote back to the charity and said, look, I've done really well. I've got a first. I've passed all my bar exams first time round. I'm looking for a job. Thank you so much for lending me the money. Promise I'm really good for it. I'll do anything to make sure I pay you back, basically. And the guy's secretary called me up, and he called me in, big office, old school mahogany office. He's this old Jewish guy, and he had a chat to me, and once we finished the chat, he goes, "Let's go upstairs." Took me upstairs, took me to the top floor, introduced me to a few people, and basically I had an interview a couple of days later, and I started work on the Monday, and I've not stopped work since. And what I got a job in the City of London's most prestigious investigations unit. So it used to be involved in investigating, defending, and pursuing both organised crime, but also corporate fraud. So I started off on the civil side, just through workload pressure. I ended up doing some of the criminal stuff. I was never that was never my niche. And then when the financial crisis hit, I did banking and finance litigation. So recovering money for the banks who had all lost fortune.
I can just imagine some of our listeners listening to this, and you've talked about a lot of really interesting topics and your journey. But there might be some people saying, and we had a conversation about this before we started recording. It's all right for him though. So he accidentally found out that he was clever after all, after pissing about at school. He went to do some A levels and he couldn't get into economics, so he did law. Like, there seems to be a lot of lucky throws of the dice to the casual listener.
Yeah.
And then I realised, then I got the highest marks in the bar exam. And then I'm thinking of Mike from Suits with your eidetic memory.
Yeah.
And then you did that really well. Then your daughter was born, so you thought, right, well, I'm going to stop doing that. And I married an amazing woman who was into property. And it feels like there's a lot of positive momentum there. But so maybe you could speak to what have been the challenges, what have been the mistakes that people don't see behind all the success.
I have been horrendously burnt out. I would say at least 14 times in my life have been so burnt out that, you couldn't really be any more burnt out and still be alive, and pushed myself to the absolute extremes, both like in legal practice, but also entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is brutal. It's really hard at times. I'd say that first 5 years are not fun. They are hard, and there's some really dark moments in there. And there's a lot of stuff we don't know. And if we knew, would we do it? And my friend Tom once said that to me. He said, Paul, if you knew how hard it was, the problem is you might not have started. I thought, Tom, you got a point, mate. Maybe you have got a point. So I think one of the things that has really worked for me is that I do have, like, when I lock onto something, when I have the vision and become emotionally attached to it, which I create, like I make that a thing. I attach like emotion to the things that I want to achieve. One of the side effects is that I do become very locked in, and like nothing will get in the way to the point of, like, a sane person would stop. But there is that Steve Jobs thing, which is like, you've got to be crazy, because if you're not crazy, all the sane people stop. And I talk to people about this. If someone is really struggling, I always draw them this graph, which is the graph of progress, which is work, 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 work. Nothing's happening. Work, 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 work. Everybody else I know who's doing this has now given up. They're doing something else. It looks really interesting. Work, 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 work. And then suddenly, it all suddenly comes together, and you're suddenly an overnight success. And then the applause arrives. In the meantime, like, it's been this like hellish nightmare. So I think you do have to be that nuts to push through. And that's why I don't think people should ever do anything on their own. I think where I have thrived most is when you find a little tribe to be in, and you work together and you support each other and nurture each other and approach things with like compassion. James has been to, my breakfast meeting. Like, one of the things that drives me is, I think that one of the things that's lost in entrepreneurship is like a sense of self-compassion. I listen to entrepreneurs and freelancers and people trying to build their own thing, and you listen to like the judgment and criticism they have of themselves if they allow themselves to be vulnerable and tell the truth. And it's like, the solution is self-compassion, like kindness is approach. And I often will say to somebody, okay, so what is the kindest version of this? You could describe this. What's the kindest version of this? And then when they describe it, it's like, well, isn't that amazing? Like, imagine you spoke to yourself all of that time. There's an amazing guy called Professor Paul Gilbert, who wrote a book called The Compassionate Mind, which is, we should all be more compassionate to ourselves.
I am an absolute nightmare. I am ruthless with myself.
Most people are. Most people speak to themselves in a way they would not speak to their worst enemy.
Never in my wildest dreams talk to anybody I do to myself.
Sometimes you talk to me that way. Just so
I do. I do a dumbed down version. It can be worse, honestly. But I'm terrible for it. absolutely terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I never celebrate my wins. I do bring this. I've started to become a bit better with that now, but I was just like, yeah, you should be doing that. Right, get on with it.
And that's normal though. That is normal. You know, like people are on a hamster wheel. They go from year to year. They go through trials and tribulations, and they never pause. And I think, you know, it's almost like culturally frowned upon to acknowledge your successes and your thing, which so as part of my life and the people I work with and stuff we do as a family as well. Like we have this ongoing process of acknowledging like just how blessed we are and the successes we've had, and even the things that would be described as failures. Like, what did we learn from this? Who do we meet? What are they like? You know, because we're living in this time in history where there's this, like, we're so polarized. We're apparently so polarized. You know, apparently everybody hates each other. Apparently everybody's at each other's throats. But I challenge anybody in their daily lives when they interact with other humans, like they're often sat opposite just a fabulous human doing the best they can, you know, and if they're shown love and support and care and nurturing, they can blossom. Like, we have so few enemies, really, you know, but the world is presented to us as if that is true, and that's not my experience. Like, my experience is that humans are, broadly speaking, fabulous. There's a few evil people. We should dispense with them, but you know.
I think that comes down to our fundamental mindset, though, doesn't it? You know, and I think at the highest level, there's a belief that says this is a hostile universe or this is a friendly universe.
Yes.
And so
pick,
and it's your decision. And I think something you said there that reminds me of my mentor, Tony Robbins, says, which is we need to trade our expectations for appreciations. And we're so expectant of ourselves, of others, of the world, that we don't appreciate the things that are right there in front of us that we could choose to enjoy and celebrate. And I think celebrating ourselves, celebrating other people, and you said earlier as well, put yourself outside your own expectations and how can I serve others?
Yeah.
That's what drives away fear and anxiety and scarcity.
Yeah.
When we focus on others. And I mean, I have to say, hats off to James, because everything he's done at his lowest point wasn't about getting his own welfare back, but instead making the welfare of others his priority. And that's where he's built this incredible network, Property and Poppadoms.
Thank you, sir.
You talked about the challenges and, you know, that you went through on the way up. So if you lost it all and you had to start again from absolute ground zero, like James essentially has to do, what would you do differently? And what advice would you give to somebody who's maybe in that position right now?
I think the way I currently think about it is like be of service. So this is a mantra that I kind of have is like be of service. So, you know, whether it's speaking at a large conference in front of hundreds of people, you know, people you respect and admire as well, or, you know, my property breakfast, or, you know, the business group that I host, or the retreats I host, you know, sometimes, you know, you're a bit nervous or you're anxious, and you know, there's a bit of fear in there. What's really helping me right now, and has been for the last couple of years, is just to kind of set it up mentally with like, how can I be of service to these people today? And that just, for some reason, just seems to neutralize absolutely everything. The most profound example I can give you is my adventure retreat, you know, because I'm bringing together a lot of people who don't know each other, and I'm going to make them do things that is a stretch, and it's designed to be a stretch, like not to stress them, but it is a stretch, like up a mountain, yoga, you know, because like people might go to yoga classes and they might feel comfortable in that environment, but if you've never been to a yoga class, you're absolutely terrified. And you're making up all kinds of nonsense in your head about what the yoga teacher will be like. You know, our yoga teacher's amazing, she's hilarious. Or, you know, you're taking people paddleboarding. Not everybody can swim. Not everybody feels comfortable in the water. So, you know, you are stretching these people. So I'm happy to admit, you know, the 24 hours before that event, you know, I'm really like in the zone with it. And you know, I have that word with myself. I say like, Paul, day, like how can we be of service to these people? And then everything is fine. And then it's rock and roll. Then everything kicks in. And, then the fun starts. It's all good.
I am looking forward to going on one of your retreats.
You'll love it.
It always falls on the week when I've got my daughters.
We're going to arrange it so you can make the next one.
I would absolutely love that because they look so much fun. And obviously, I'm a big fan of your property and investor breakfast meeting.
You're a big fan of breakfast, full stop.
I am.
Aren't we all?
I am. I do love a fry-up, I'm not going to lie. Archie, I don't, honestly, because I'll get punished. No, he won't. He's a good lad. Archie and Alexandra are very... they're very patient with me in terms of the ups and downs. But obviously, we're not here to talk about them today, but we're here to talk about the property and investor breakfast.
In fairness, you have made incredible progress.
I've lost a lot of weight.
Yeah.
A lot. And actually, it's where previously, because I've fallen off the wagon a little bit in terms of training, just because I've had so much on, sort of personally and professionally.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, I would have gone back to default. I would have ballooned again, but I haven't. I've made real conscious decisions not to sort of go back to just cramming my face with beautifully tasty food, but very very calorific. And I'm making those right choices that have stabilised. And then when I've got a little bit more time again and we can kick back in properly, I can get back to it and get losing some weight again.
Kudos to you. And you can see that everybody's noticed it because everybody mentions it. You know, every time they see you.
I was a porky boy.
But I think a great resource for people on that is Peter Attia's book, Outlive. Have you read that?
No.
Read that.
It's one of my... I don't read a lot.
Listen to it.
Yeah.
So I don't read, obviously.
Yeah.
Dyslexic. So I listen to everything. But that book changed my life. And it changed... I lost 4 stone, like healthiest I've ever been. Because what I took from that book, if I had to take one thing, was that everything is downstream of your metabolic health.
Yeah.
So how heavy you are, basically.
Yeah.
In the same way I talked about, I think everything is downstream of happiness.
Yeah.
Try and cultivate happiness and all will flow from it. I also think, if I've got a family, with like high blood pressure, heart disease, lung disease, you could write a list. And I was looking down the barrel of that. When my dad had a heart attack when he was 60, the guy, his consultant, after he spoke to my dad, then looked me in the eyes and said, "This is coming for you, mate. This is coming for you because you're biologically identical to your dad. You look like your dad, and this is coming for you." And that was a wake up call, which I did nothing about for 20 years. And then, but in Peter Attia's book, the big lesson I learned is, there's all this downstream stuff. One of the ways of heading most of it off is be healthy, like be in appropriate weight, eat a reasonably balanced diet, get some steps in, believe in something, having purpose and meaning.
Absolutely. And I spoke with Archie yesterday, and I sort of compared how I felt this time last year to now. I was just counting down the days, the minutes till I could have 2 weeks off. Yeah. Because I was just so fried.
Yeah.
But at that point, I was 16 stone, just living on coffee, way too much beautiful curry. And I know there's no way you can have too much curry, but I was having too much curry. And I bumped into him in like the first week of January, and I thank my lucky stars that I did, because now at this point I feel a million times better. Like, I cannot tell you, it's night and day. I'm a bit tired, obviously, because it's been a long year again, but not like I almost became non-verbal. I was that tired last December.
Yeah.
But now I feel, full of energy, full of life, and looking forward to the break, of course, but not like I felt last year.
And isn't the magical thing that anybody watching this podcast could do that on Monday?
Oh, 100%.
Like any of us could have the weekend to reflect upon it and then say, do you know what, on Monday it's going to be different.
And the thing was, it was almost immediate to a certain degree. I started drinking more water because I just wasn't drinking any water before. had less coffee, didn't completely eradicate, and nothing really changed
Yeah.
apart from my choices in terms of, right, I'm not going to have this extra this or this extra that. I've had 3 coffees or whatever today. That's it now, mate. I was having like 10 or 12 coffees a day. I was nailing them. It was just.
And he went his way. He's anxious.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not anxious. He was like, "How did you sleep?" I was like a baby. It just came completely.
You're obviously able to metabolize caffeine, because I would be just. I'd be.
I felt fine in terms. I was massively overweight because it was all sort of lattes. I've got this great coffee machine, and it just does the best coffee, and so that was a real challenge.
I think to just summarise that, it reminds me of the old ancient proverb, which is, a healthy man has 1,000,000 dreams.
Yes.
An unhealthy man has only one.
Yeah.
So health, obviously the bedrock for any entrepreneur, and that's why I think the Optimized Entrepreneur is such a great program.
Yeah.
We could talk all day, Paul, but I'd love you to conclude this fantastic episode with a couple of your reflections and recommendations for 2026.
Okay. And also what you got planned as well.
Yeah. So what's your professional recommendation for any property investor or entrepreneur looking for more success in 26? What's your personal recommendation for them? And what's the one book that they should read next year if they haven't already?
I've read a lot of books recently.
Well, you've cited about 12 so far.
So I think professionally it is have a plan. Approach things with a completely new perspective. Like, the world is changing, and I think have a plan. There's that famous quote, isn't there? The Warren Buffett one: "An idiot with a plan will always beat a genius without one." So I think, like, whenever you listen to this, whenever you watch this, is take some time out and think about the plan. It's the first question. Whenever anybody asks me for advice, it's the first question I ask is, how does this fit into your plan? And the answer I get 90% of the time is, what plan would that be, Paul? And I'm talking very, very successful people. So I think it's having a plan. What I mean by that as well is really create a detailed vision of the future. So not trivial goals, but like really like in your DNA deep. So where do we need to be in 5 years' time? Where do you want to be 10, 20 years' time? And link it to age, so link it, if you're fortunate enough to have one or more parents still alive, think about how old your parents are and what opportunities you have with them. If you happen to have children, think about the phases of life they will go through. So I happen to have a daughter, so in theory, she might get married at some point. At a period, she might start her own family. At some period, she might want to change career. And think about like how I could be in a position to support her through those different parts of that part of her journey as well, and the phases of life that we'll go through as Liz and I as a married couple. So I really envisage it. I give them pithy titles. Like, I've got Silver Surfer is like a chapter of my life. I've got Nirvana 2.0 as another chapter of my life, because I've got a surf retreat on the coast and I want to build a surf retreat in some woodland. And that's Nirvana 2.0, and it's got a start date, and I can see, and I think about it when I wake up. And then say, one, have the plan.
And just, there is a good book that says, without a vision, the people perish.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. We're going to end up with so many different book recommendations. So what that then triggers within me is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Because I think one of the challenges that we currently face now in the world of AI and technology and screens is the people who are going to struggle the most are the people who don't have purpose. We have to have purpose. We have to be driven by something that is beyond and above ourselves, because that will provide the best fuel. And we've talked about running away from and moving towards. I think running away from is useful. Like, if you hate being a lawyer, that is good fuel, but it's not the best fuel. The best fuel is being dragged like a magnet into a future that you're absolutely obsessed by and you want to be part of. So that's the kind of professional one, I think. I think on a personal level, I have been, as I've said, like horrendously burnt out, like as unwell as a human can be and still be alive. And, the antidote to that is the cliche, like health is wealth. What I didn't realize is it's not a sprint. It's a very long game, and there are seasons to the game. And sometimes, you're in the busy madness of like summer where there's lots of energy and all the rest of it. But sometimes, you have to take in the harvest. You have to enjoy the autumn, the fruits of your labor, and just unwind and allow things to unfold. From a business perspective, allow your P&L to settle down. If you've been growing like every year for 5 years, do you know what? Have a fallow year. Let the business settle down. Let the cash get back into business. And then move into winter, attend to the detail of your business and venture into a new springtime. So from a personal point of view, health is wealth. I think there are fundamental things that we could all do. The book that I would recommend in that respect would be Peter Attia's book, Outlive. Like it's like a game changer. He talks about he talks about all these things that you need to be able to do in order to live like the best 10 years of your life. And I kind of raised an eyebrow when I read them. I then went on holiday and I had to do all of these 10 things on holiday. So, for example, the lift at the airport, we had to get a connecting flight. Our first flight was late. We had to sprint across the airport. Check. We had to get on a moving bus and put our luggage above our heads on a moving bus. Check. The lift went in the airport, so I had to carry all of our bags up 5 flights of steps. It's like, check. This guy knows what he's talking about. So definitely health is wealth in that book. And then the final one, what was the final question?
Oh, that's it. You've nailed it all.
Oh, future plans.
That was James' question. Future plans.
Future plans are enjoy doing my podcast. I really love doing my podcast. Continue to host my breakfast meetings. Enjoy my inner circle business group. It only has 10 people in it. Doors open in January. And like live a life of purpose, meaning, and design. And then organize some crazy adventure retreats. Take people at mountains, take people surfing, taking people to experience different parts of themselves.
So just finally, you speak about making a plan and the importance of it. You do have a call early January to...
I do. Every January, I do this Discovery Day, and I take people through, in 2 hours, the process that we do as a family. And we completely design the year ahead. Like every aspect of our lives, we completely design. We have this complete, renewal, reinvention. And I organize that every January. I'll give you the link, put it in the show notes.
Yep.
And 100% of the proceeds of that event go to a charity in Leeds called Flourishing Families. I could talk about them all day, and I'd end up often in tears about it. So I'm not going to do that on this occasion because we need to wrap up the podcast. But they do the most amazing things. So what they do is they have this belief that if you support and nurture families, downstream of that is all the good things. So if a child is, nurtured and supported in a family environment, they will go on to do wonderful things. And the opposite is true. If they're not nurtured and supported and they're not given kindness, there is a different path. And they do amazing things, just to give them like a practical example. In COVID, where the government shut down the world, they were boots on the ground the next day, knocking on people's doors. Are you okay? Do you have what you need? Do your kids have what you need? Delivering people food parcels, and they were knocking on doors, and there were men and women opening their doors in pieces, because they didn't have the resources they needed. They weren't in the mental state to cope with crisis. They didn't have support around them, and these men and women did the work. And so I'm like
a staunch advocate.
And we give 100% of the proceeds to them.
Brilliant. A great cause. So mate, thank you so much. This has been I reckon our best podcast so far. Do you think?
Well, I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to diminish any of our other podcasts.
Exactly.
But I would say I've really enjoyed this, Paul.
Yeah.
So thanks very much for coming along today, and I hope everybody listening has been enjoying it as well. Final words, James?
Get yourself to a property and poppadoms meeting. That's it. Put that weight on. Reach out to Archie at the Optimized Entrepreneur. Lose it. Feel great. Keep going to the meetings.
Your health is your wealth.